Hello, everyone. Hello, hello, hello. It is the Presence Posse again. Here we ride with Bobby Cobb, Danielle McMahon, and I'm Miriam Siegel. And today is the third episode in our trilogy. And our topic is presence and creating. And if you haven't managed to catch up on the first two episodes, they are in our free Presence Posse Facebook group. So have a look at them anytime after this, but not right now because you need to be here live for this one, Presence and Creating with us. I thought I would get the ball rolling with a Merriam-Webster online dictionary definition of creating, pull a couple of those out of the hat. Creating as in bringing into existence, or producing or bringing about something by a course of action or behavior. This one I think is interesting. Or to produce through imaginative skill. So those are some of the definitions of creating. And having said that, who would like to say something? My mind goes straight to the way we create things, like we think we know what's going on with another person, something they've done, and so we create a whole scenario around it and make assumptions and interpretations and judgments, and that is a form of creation for me, not necessarily the best kind of creation, but it is a way we use our creativity. So we can probably get into we'll likely get into the idea of appropriate or helpful creation contra not necessarily helpful and appropriate creation, and presence. So who'd like to chime in?
I can chime in on that. When
All
you were
right.
talking, I'm like, well, that's definitely something we covered in the Landmark Education series that I did, that things are stories and we make them up, right? And if we're going to make up a story, we might as well make up a really good story, a really fascinating, empowering, mysterious, whatever fun we find in that, instead of making somebody's gas pain be a judgment against us. So that definitely is one form of creation, but it was not the first thought on my mind. And one of the first thoughts on my mind was, I read a book called Creative Visualization, and I was probably 16 or 17 when I read it, and I remember doing it, and I remember drawing out the little map of where I wanted to be and where I wanted to live, what I wanted to create for my life. And I remember talking to my son a couple years ago and going, it's actually pretty close to this frame
Wow.
that, that I now
Wow.
live on. I had no idea how many experiences were going to be in between that creative visualization and this actual creation of where I live. And yeah, so that was definitely a process, but it kind of did come about.
That is so cool. That is
It's
so cool.
it's interesting that on something on presence and creating that we have immediately revealed the so-called dark side of creating, that we are bringing the formless into form. I mean, that's what we do in the human experience. And not all creations are necessarily good, particularly the ones where we are just creating a potential and often misguided narrative around what we think
Mhm.
is going on, which really, kind of looking back at the first two shows in this series, that was about really pausing. And we started with possibilities. We're real good at creating the story of what we think is going to happen next. And we get very attached oftentimes to that story of what's going to happen next. And to the degree that we're putting, these blinders on where we can't see anything other than the manifestation of the dream ranch, we're cutting off the possibilities of other things that may be showing up for us. So it's a cool circle back to the very beginning of the little arc that we have created for this winter series, the winter trilogy.
Yeah, I think it also helps people make sense of why we've chosen, or partly why we've chosen the trilogy. What was the point of the whole thing? Because we've never done a trilogy before, as far as I recall, and we've been doing this for like 2 years or over 2 years. So, and part of it is every once in a while we'll bring some sort of exercise. This is what you can do to train this or whatever. Or we'll talk about a certain theme, but we don't necessarily sew our episodes together in a progression. And this particular trilogy has definitely, as far as I'm concerned, done that and been focused on that. A little bit interesting, call it the dark side of creating. I just find it really fun. I tend to laugh at myself a lot. Thank goodness for that. I didn't always do that. I used to be very self-critical. Fortunately, that is not my way of being in the world so much anymore. But I do laugh at myself at the times where I can recall, or still noticing when something does come up where I at all times have a choice. At least, I'm going to be actually a little bit careful about this one. I'll explain why. And that is people who have experienced very overwhelming experiences. Their knee-jerk reaction, or the way we're biologically programmed to protect ourselves, that's not a conscious choice. So I just want to qualify that for a moment. When somebody's shooting at you, your parts of your brain shut off. You're not supposed to be standing there talking. It's like, run now, right? So aside from that kind of experience, we have a choice of as to which meaning we assign to things. And I have to laugh sometimes, because a lot of times in my background growing up, it was like, he's out to get me, or she did that on purpose, or there was always some sort of thing that was assigned to the person against us, right? They did that to hurt me. Every time that shows up, I think of Eckhart Tolle, who always go, me, ego is me, which is also a construct and a thought. But I noticed, thinking about the topic for today, this presence and creating, is how often and how easy it is to create something that has to do with some sort of intrigue or drama or something like that, when we can actually just as easily choose something that allows us to feel open and flowing and more present, right? It is that ability to make that conscious choice and the awareness that we have that in us, that God, if you want to call it that, at all times, generally speaking, at all times, where we can choose what we create, what meaning we assign to each situation. So I just find that really, really fascinating, and laugh at myself for all the times that I have chosen. I'm doing it now. It's just so funny. I've chosen to create some problem or hold something against someone, and it's like, and then having to come back sooner or later to, that was all me. I orchestrated the whole thing in my head, right? And even if their intention is to hurt on some level, I still don't have to make it into that. I still don't have to live in that world. I can choose to bring something else into that picture, some other energy, some other perspective into it for my own sake. So that's my take on that right at this moment.
And I would say you don't even need other people to be in that. Like, you can do it all within yourself, right? Like earlier today, I looked at the clock and I'm like, oh, well, I have to do this and this, and then I have to be here for that, and then I have to do this and this and this need to also get accomplished today. And I was feeling my body like go into overdrive, right? All these things have to happen now. All has to happen today. It all has to happen in a certain order. And then I just giggled, like, really? None of this is all that important. It could just flow like paint. It might be beautiful. It might all work out and all these things will get accomplished. And I don't have to jump in there, right? Like I can just show up for it. I don't have to control it and manipulate it and be all in a tizzy about it, because it was definitely a choice before me. What would I like to create for the rest of my day? And as I came into presence, I'm like, well, I would like to create flow. How about that? I like that. So that's what I chose. And so far, so good, right? Like I
Yay.
haven't had to miss
Imagine if I
anything
didn't have
or
to make
be
things
out of
into a
sorts.
problem.
And
It's
Danielle, did
wonderful.
I hear you correctly that you said I can just choose flow?
I did.
I love that. And Miriam, you mentioned flow earlier. I don't know if you noticed when I pointed at the camera and I said yes, yes, in my head. And that to me is what this whole trilogy has been about, is getting into the flow of life and noticing that there is a flow of life. The first one was about presence and possibilities. And so recognizing there's a lot more going on than what we see when we're going through life with the blinders. And that to me, kind of, Danielle, is what for a moment there, you put the
Mhm.
blinders on and said, whoa, I just got so much stuff ahead of me. And that served as a really nice and elegant pattern interrupt for you. And it served as a little cause for a pause, just to like sit back and go, wait a second. Okay, I'm starting to get overwhelmed here.
Mhm.
What's going on? Can I just go with the flow? Which was, that to me was the second one, about possibilities and receiving. Because the moment that we notice that life has a flow, then we can decide, do we want to fight against the current of life, or do we want life to be row, row, row your boat gently down the stream? Merrily, 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 merrily. Life is but a dream. And it's a dream of our own creating. So both of you ladies, man, you just, I think, summarized it so beautifully. And here I am turning it into like a dissertation. What I do. But it's really about recognizing now, with presence and creating, is what we're creating next.
Mm.
Is it what's flowing through us? Is it what source or God or cosmic consciousness or wherever, natural intelligence, are we creating what the universe is asking of us? Or are we attempting to egoically create something that we think is going to serve in the story of Bobby or Danielle or Miriam? And that's a good check. I told the story last week of my friend who manifested is really the only way to describe what he did. He was living here in Anchorage. He and his wife decided, they had been talking a lot about moving to Hawaii. And he's like, okay, we're going to explore this a little bit more seriously. And for my friend Jimmy, that meant putting the house up for sale, but at an absurd price, that if we were able to get this price, that would be the universe telling us, this is your next step. That is the universe closing one door, giving you an offer on your house, opening up another one, giving you more money than you thought you'd be able to pull out this house to go create your dreams in Hawaii. And like he put up what he thought was an absurd offer, got a competitive bidding situation happening in a day. And he was kind of like, wow, okay, I guess this is really happening. And he went and he wanted to create this food forest. As luck would have it, once he was there in Hawaii in about 8 weeks, he just found exactly what you described, Danielle. Looking back at it, this is pretty much exactly what I envisioned. And now he begins every day. I mean, this was so powerful to him that he has a little ceremony he conducts all by himself, walks out naked into the woods. He lives on 14 acres and he doesn't have any neighbors. Everybody there is in the woods, and he's got ultimate privacy. And he goes out and he just opens up his heart and his mind and says, what do you want of me today, Forrest? Where should my energy goes? And waits for a signal. And then he goes about creating that. And that is like such an elegant example of what is possible when we release into the flow of energy that's running through us all the time. And if we get out of our head enough, and to me, when we get into our heart, that's where we can really feel the flow of life. When we're locked up in the control center, we're like the generals back in the safety of the Pentagon, looking at what's going on, giving directions to the warriors that are out on the battlefield. But the warriors are living through their heart. They know what's going on, and they know what the right reaction is. And getting our heart and our mind to live in harmony makes life just a little bit more effortless and elegant.
Beautiful.
End of dissertation. Hard to believe that started with me complimenting how you guys got the essence of it with just a single word.
Well, as you and Fred pointed out last time on Wednesday, we love to talk on the Presence Posse. I'm going to bring in actually, and I love that this has come up with Danielle and you, Bobby, this idea of envisioning, right? I envision something, and then my present shows me that it's very similar to what I envisioned. Or with your friend who does the food forest in Hawaii. There are, I'd say, a fair amount of people out there who wish they could. It's kind of like, okay, but I ask the universe or whoever, God, or whatever you want to call it. There's no judgment here. I don't care. As long as, asking, what do you want? What is my purpose today? Or what is my purpose in this life? Or what is meant for me to do today? And experience not getting an answer, or at least not being able to pick up on some signal. And then the question becomes, what do you do with that? And since our topic is presence and creating, it's like, do you create chaos? Do you create a problem because you haven't heard some or noticed some clear response? Or do you just keep putting one foot in front of the other and doing and living your life and being with whatever is? It's like, I don't know. Okay. That's what is right now. You don't know. So trying to force knowing something is not necessarily going to help you. And as a matter of fact, it may get in the way of you actually receiving the information that is there. So for those of you who may have heard what we were talking about and thought, oh yeah, but I've asked and I've done that. I don't have a clear picture of my future. I don't have any clear plans, whatever. You don't have to. Unless you think you do. And then you're creating something. And is that the best use of your creativity? And it's just an open question. There's no judgment. Is that the best use for you of your creativity? And still listening, still paying attention. I did a thing. This is just slightly different, but it showed me the power of that, of paying attention, being present and listening. I think I've told this story on the Presence Posse before, but we've been doing this for 2 years, so it was a while ago. When I was in Germany on a course, I was doing a training, and I'd gone for a walk during the lunch break, and we had to be back at something like 2:00 or whatever. And I was looking around, and I have no idea where I am, and I'm running out of time. I don't know how to get back. And this is not at a time when there's GPS. Like, I don't have anything like that with me. So I just go to, every time I come to a corner, I just stop and ask, which way? And I just am there, listening, noticing. And I would notice that my body would make some subtle shift or very obvious shift. I go, okay, that way. And then I'd go that way. Next corner, which way? And just allow. It took me half an hour. I got back to the hotel, but I came to the hotel, like behind the hotel, to a part of the hotel I'd never seen. I hadn't been in that direction. I didn't even know it was there. I got there in time for the start of the course, but the only thing I did was ask for directions and listen and just be. And we can do that at all times, generally speaking. It does require, or there is an assumption of the ability to be present enough to hear, which can be trained, as we say so often. But there was just such a beauty in the whole experience of knowing all I have to do is ask the question and be. And there was no need to be afraid. I imagine if something had happened and I was running out of time, I could knock on somebody's door or whatever. There's nobody in the street. So, I mean, there are options, but it's just that sort of, do I do this? How often do I do this in my life? Ask the question, which way? Or what do I need to be doing right now? What is best for me right now? What feels right now? And then just be and allow the information to come instead of trying to fix everything in control and create this sort of chaotic, desperate kind of existence where the other is again in a flow and a peaceful receiving state, to point back to what we spoke about last time. So that is the end of my dissertation, except that I want to ask y'all who are watching, please contribute. I mean, what are you thinking about what you're hearing so far? Because we think we've made some pretty good points, but we don't know what you guys think. So please let us know. Write us some comments, give us some hearts and all of that stuff. If you're liking it, if you're hating it, don't give us any hearts. Well, you can give us hearts anyway with good intentions. Danielle, you want to add something here?
Yeah, we'll be the posse you love to hate. Yeah, there was definitely a Friday night soap opera thing that was on JR. Remember JR? Dallas was the name of it, right? And everybody loved to hate JR. So he did all right. We do all right with being the posse that people love to hate. But there were a couple of things that came up as the two of you were talking, and one of them was as Bobby was talking and saying, you know, we have this brain that likes to solve problems, so it sees problems everywhere, right? So it makes it into a problem so it can solve it. And then we have our heart that likes to do the flowing, that likes to feel its way around, right? So I saw this poem on Facebook and it was beautiful. It was about this woman saying, my heart and my brain have gotten divorced.
Yeah.
We just argue and bicker all the time, and I just don't know what to do, and I don't know how to live in this situation where they're divorced from one another, and whatever interaction they have is not good. And the end of the poem said, "Come to your lungs, because in that breath, you are present."
Oh, wow.
So yeah, that's kind of what I thought was like, oh wow, that's really good. Like you just come to breath and that in now and out now, and then they will learn. I guess in the midst of the poem there somewhere she goes to her gut and starts living from her gut, and her gut is the one that tells her to go to her lungs, because then she'll be in the present moment. So that it was just something that occurred to me as he was talking. Like we have all these different ways of explaining how we're functioning, right? Like we're functioning from this part or that part, or and we talk about different parts of ourselves as if they were individual parts, and of course they're
Yeah.
not, right? They all function all the time, and we are within all of that thinking and feeling and being and all of that. It is presence. We bring all of ourselves to that practice so that we can begin to function in the present moment with all of us present. And yeah, it takes practice. It's not something we're taught, generally speaking, and that's why there is a presence posse, because we're all trying to help people with this as we help ourselves and learn it ourselves, because it wasn't taught to us, and yet we found it very important, right? So we want to help people not take 40 years to figure that out or 20 years to figure that out. And I think that seems to be a theme more often now too. And Fred and Bobby addressed that in their special edition, that it doesn't have to take years of sitting with a guru, or it doesn't have to take lifetimes, right? There is more people understanding that it can come much more quickly than that, and that there are many different kinds of exercises that don't require you to do even 20 minutes of sitting in and trying to stop your thoughts, because it's probably not going to happen that way, right? You allow them, you don't control them, and all of those things that are foreign to us, that are not taught to us. But there was one little magic trick, I think is what he called it, that I just heard the other day, was just pretend like you just got here. And so I did that throughout the day. Like, what's it like to look out of these eyes like it's brand new? I've heard that term beginner's mindset in a lot of different ways, right? But this was like whole thing. Just pretend like you just got here. And it was fun. I had great fun with it, to appreciate what you don't appreciate because you've taken it for granted. All of our senses, all 5, 6, 7, 8, however many senses it is we actually have, because I don't think we know.
Yeah, one of the things that struck me as you guys were talking is, and actually Fred kind of brought it up in one of the earlier podcasts, that through our egoic need to create, through our conditioned belief that we've got to be doing something right now. I don't know what to do. Well, what are you going to do? You got to do something. That is a conditioned belief. And there's a beautiful line from the Tao Te Ching, which is a Chinese holy book. Not really a holy book, a book of philosophy, maybe it might be more appropriate. But regardless, there's a line in there that asks the question, can you be patient enough to let the mud settle? And in this case, it was talking about a pristine pond that somebody had walked through and stirred up all of the mud and the silt in the beginning. So it had gone from being super clear to muddy. And the author asks, do you have the patience to allow the mud to settle and let the next right action appear? And, sometimes when we ask, if we're getting real quiet and asking our inner guru for guidance, do I go left or do I go right? sometimes we do get back nothing, and nothing can be instruction too, just to sit. And if you notice, most animals who are surprised by something, and I don't know how horses do, but I certainly know dog and cats, when they see something that is surprising to them, their instinct is to stop and freeze and look and watch and see. And it seems like our conditioned response as human beings, when something's going on that we don't understand, our conditioned reaction is to speed everything up. Our mental tachometer goes to the red line. So inviting ourselves in to having patience, to get quiet enough so that we can hear the whispers of wisdom. You said it can be trained, Miriam, and I agree with you. It totally can. But I think we're training ourselves to relax into a less conditioned relationship with the present moment. And, not to be thinking, we get it is a powerful axiom at a certain stage of mental readiness to think, if it is to be, it is up to me. That is a very empowering axiom, right up until the point that you think anything that's going to happen, I have to do it. And, I don't grow any of the potatoes that I grow, but I do plant them. And then after that, I'm done until it's time to harvest. Nature is doing everything else that's going on. So I really like that idea of, can you give yourself permission to just pause for a moment and sit with this confusion that you're experiencing right now? And that's what that exercise that Fred took me through on the special edition, he was very specific. Don't try to fix it. Don't try to search for what it means. Don't try to decode it. Can you just give yourself permission to just be with it for a second and see what shows up for you? And I mean, you can see it on that video that we did, which is in the Presence Posse. Here we are, thousands of miles apart from each other, but Fred's watching me on the screen. And at one point he goes, there, what just happened right there? And he's not psychic. He could see that I was like, oh, like my whole physiology changed in that moment of insight. And he had the eyes to see that the shift he was anticipating had just occurred, because that's the way the world works. And so I kind of think of what we are talking about training to a degree, and we are talking about establishing new habits to a degree. But for me, particularly with the people that I work with, who tend to be very high achievers, very goal-oriented people, and it is like they have got, if it is to be, it is up to me, tattooed on their forehead, so they see it every time they look in the mirror. They think of themselves as masters of the universe. And when we start doing our work together, and I start to say, how about if you just slow down just a little bit to see if there's a flow, a current to life, and just to notice, are you going with the flow or are you fighting the current? Just asking yourself that question the same way you did, Miriam, on the streets of the city that you didn't know. Is the energy telling me to go this way or to go that way? And just waiting and seeing and taking a couple of steps. And that's one thing I notice on a lot of projects when I'm like, okay, how am I going to do this? And I'll get an idea and I'll start working on that. And instantly, like every fiber of my being is telling me that's not it. You can continue to try to force that square peg into a round hole, but if you're paying any attention at all, dude, you can tell these were not meant to go together in this way. And then sometimes it's like, okay, sit and let's try something else. And then all of a sudden it's, oh, you know, like my friend Jimmy, we'll never get that from this house. We listed it at an absurd price. And then, they just accepted our offer on the house. We've sold the house. Now what? And that's being in the flow. And so it's a different type of control. But instead of trying to control everything that's out there going on in the world, you're really more controlling your reaction to it and your experience of it. And most of that control comes from letting go and letting go into the flow. At least that's been my recent experience. That's the way it looks to me lately.
I find a question very helpful from my mindfulness training. And that is, what is it like to be me right now? Because if I'm willing to ask that, and I like the idea that you were sort of describing this idea of inviting, right? It's like inviting, and sometimes I have to invite myself into the moment because I'm creating all kinds of problems for myself and stress moments, as Danielle was describing earlier. And then just stopping for a moment and checking, like, what's it like to be me? Okay, I feel stressed or whatever. Okay, what am I creating? Like, where is this coming from? What kind of thoughts do I have? Where do I feel it in my body? Letting my body inform me about what's going on with me, not going into the story, or how I tend to describe it as not living there as if it's real, but just noticing what arises, what emotion, what thought, what impulse, even without acting on it, just noticing what shows up and getting curious about that and letting that inform me. Again, giving myself time to get to know myself and what's going on with me and let it go. Give myself the option of creating something else. So it's like, what is it like to be me right now? And in relation to other people, I also love the question, what's it like to be me here with you right now? And that's a beautiful thing, because what kind of masks am I putting on? What kind of pressure am I putting on myself and assigning it to you? It's like, you're expecting me. No, I'm the one I'm the one who's putting the pressure on. I don't have to listen to you. So if I'm feeling pressured, it's me, right? And then catching all of that. So I just wanted to bring that in. I see that Fred's come, actually, so I'm going to bring him in a moment. But I wanted to get back to one of the questions that someone has written in the comments about art therapy. And lo and behold, how convenient it is that I am an expressive arts psychotherapist.
Love when that happens.
Well, and it was in our description too, that, you could create through those different outlets, right?
Yeah. And I'm just going to sort of describe a situation I was in where I was giving a lecture or running a workshop. And we gave everybody a piece of paper and two colored pencils and had them. How did you do that? I'm impressed. I was just going to bring you in, Fred. You came in on your own.
Did I do something? I don't know.
Yeah, you came in on your own. Well, that's really cool. Welcome. Okay, now I'm going to finish my story and then I'll come back to you. And then asking people to put one colored pencil in each hand like this, right? You know how you used to color when you were a kid? You couldn't hold the pencils like this when you were a kid. You held them like that. And have them close their eyes and draw. And the beauty of that is you can't see what you're doing. You can't control the pencil in the way that you're used to as an adult. So now it's all discovery. It's all a presence exercise. And what happens? And what are you creating now? Are you creating fear, expectations, judgments, assumptions, or are you being with flow? Are you just being in the moment and experiencing and bringing curiosity? What's going on? And once everybody was done, they got about a minute to do whatever they wanted to on the paper. And then I asked, what was that like? Everybody expected it to be something about what they'd drawn. I asked about the experience and the looks on people's faces because they weren't expecting it. They were expecting, okay, I was asked to draw something, so I drew something, and now we're going to talk about what I drew. I'm supposed to look at it and sort of decipher it or something. Nah! What was the experience like? What was it like to be you? So art therapy or art is, in my experience, can be an invitation into the now, an invitation to be present and be very experiential without creating a whole bunch of stuff. But it is also an opportunity to create a lot of stuff, story, whatever, and then take a step back, like Bobby was describing, to have a look at it. What is that? What's showing up? What's that about? Do I really need to be creating all of that right now? So I just wanted to bring that in since the question came up about art therapy. Hi, Fred. You look very serious.
Hello. Thanks for.
You want to bring some of your Dr. B perspective? I was thinking about this earlier. Fred Blum is a plum. We would generally say peach, but I just thought plum would. Yeah. Anyway, shut up, Miriam. That was me creating something here. I'm just having fun.
I have no response to that. I don't know. I'm not sure how to add my perspective yet because I'm not sure. I literally just jumped into this conversation from a previous call. So thanks for letting me in. But I'm going to sit back for a minute if I could. And as you well know, I will jump in if I have something to add.
I love that you said that. It's kind of like I want to ask people who are watching, did you notice there was no creation of any kind of pressure to say something wise or some drama or some live up to some expectation or whatever? Or I don't know what's going on in Fred's inner life, but I heard what you said. And it felt very free and present. And yeah, so.
On the inside, I'm dying.
You cover it well. I'm impressed.
Thank you. That's what I'm going for.
So we have a new question. Did you put it up, Miriam?
Do we have a new question?
Oh, no, it wasn't a question. It was a statement.
Oh, yeah, I put the comment up, but I can put it back.
We are always creating. And as you and Bobby were talking, it seemed like the essence of what both of you were saying was creating awareness. Right? So that we can be aware of how we experience this moment, this present moment. And that from there, we can choose to create. But if we're not aware of how we feel or how it is to be us in that moment, how it is to be me in that moment, then I don't have any basis to make that choice from. I'm just going on some kind of automatic nervous system, right? Like I'm reacting to a situation as opposed to responding. If I'm not aware of where I am in it, then I can't respond. I just react.
I kind of feel myself pushing back against the idea of creating awareness, that we are always creating. I feel like awareness is always there, and it's more a thing that I limit. Through our attention, we can like really focus awareness down into the minutest pinpoint And sometimes if we get overly obsessed with that, it can command all of our quote unquote awareness, but we can always relax into a greater awareness. And I think, like, as you were describing your expressive arts thing, Miriam, and that little, I mean, that's a cool little pattern interrupt to say, tell me about your experience, what it's like being you, as opposed to give me an intellectual explanation of why you created what you drew there with your eyes closed and your two colored pencils. That, and same thing with Fred when we did that exercise on Wednesday, just the way that it was set up, assuming I was following the instructions, which I did, there was nowhere else for me to go but into a relaxed state of very open awareness, where suddenly all of these possibilities were available and I was open to receiving them. So, you know, we can think about that we are always creating, and that can be that we are always bringing the formlessness of consciousness and awareness into form in some way, or we are creating the ongoing story of Bobby and how unique and special and wonderful and lovable I am.
But I don't think it's an or. You know, like
Well, that, yeah, okay, I like that.
like you're
Go ahead.
creating. It's all creation. You know, at least potentially, depending on your outlook. So you create the experience and the identity called Bobby, and you create whatever it is you create in your life. And we can get into, you know, like if we want to get into the magical side of things, then some people might say we create all of it, like it's all a projection of consciousness or something like that. And somebody on the other side might say, no, you only create, you know, with your hard work and sweat. I tend to think it's somewhere in the middle, personally. I mean, as far as our identities are concerned, they are clearly created. I mean, I wasn't born with a, you know, I mean, some people, I guess, argue about that too, that, oh, my two babies had very different personalities or something. But I tend to fall into the, I guess, more nurture than nature camp when it comes to things like egos and identities. I think that they're built, not like genetic or something. But then in the realm of creation, like to Danielle's point, I think that the degree to which we're identified with our ego, this created identity, which I always say we create egos out of fear and insecurity because we find ourselves in a world that doesn't make any sense to us. The degree to which we're creating from the perspective of ego will, I think, be largely then we're trying to create to prove something in the world, to prove our worthiness or something. And the more we get free of that, which is, you know, I mean, that takes some work to be sure, but as we get free of ego, because it's not like yes or no, it's a journey, so to speak, then there's more of us that can create from just this place of freedom. In fact, I just posted something on LinkedIn. It says, the less you have to prove, the more you get to play.
Mm.
You know?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you guys like it a lot more than apparently the people do, because nobody's
Oh dear. I
I have a specific example of that. I went to I guess it was a certification, but it was a retreat. They called it a retreat for equine assisted life coaching. And each group of 2 or 3 people had to come up with an experience to put the other people through and then ask them questions about it. And one of them was go put a halter on a horse. So we all went out into the pasture with a halter and the horses, and I walked up to a horse that walked away, and I walked up to another horse and it stood still, and I put its halter on and I brought it up. And they said, so why did you do that? I said, because I don't have anything to prove. I'm here on a retreat. I'm going to take the easy one. And one of the women in the group that created the exercise was like, huh, But for me, that's exactly what you said. I had the freedom to play because I didn't have to prove anything. And that was a very concrete example as you were speaking of that for me and my experience.
I'm going to bring up a question as we're getting close to the end of our hour. I had it up earlier, but one of our viewers, and thank you for the question. Can you speak about how avoiding conflict can actually create conflict and what might be helpful instead of avoiding? I'm going to leave that up there for a second.
That's a lot of question to answer in about 4 minutes.
Yep.
Yeah, avoiding conflict. Well, I mean, the first part I can say, I mean, it's kind of more psychology than anything, but, you know, when you avoid conflict, especially if you do it repeatedly over time, there's going to be some likely buildup of tension within yourself that is likely to come out. In fact, it's guaranteed to come out in some way. And whether it comes out like an explosion at that person, you know, one day they say, "Will you pass the salt?" And you say, "Will you shut up, or you've ruined my life." You know, but you know, depending, because some people are so conflict averse that they may just do it to themselves. You know, so they may create emotional whatever, or it could become illness for that matter. In my world, so. I don't think avoiding conflict as a rule. I mean, sometimes it may be the right choice because it's a one moment short-term decision, you know, like crossing the street to avoid the scary looking guy with the, you know, that's avoiding conflict, right? But if you're in a relationship, which I'm guessing is where that message is coming from, that question, I don't think avoiding conflict is a great strategy. I think we have to find ways to deal with it in a healthy way. And as one of my early mentors in the coaching world used to say, Steve Chandler, there's no problem that can't be solved with a conversation.
I have a different version of that I did not create. I got it from somebody, but I quote it often. All problems exist in the absence of a good conversation.
There you go.
The same thing, just phrasing it a little bit differently. So, yeah, and you know, your example of crossing the road, that's a a conflict that is going to happen or not happen very quickly. And once it's either done or doesn't happen, life goes on and you'll kind of not even remember about it. If you are referring to something in a business partnership or a romantic partnership or just even with friends, odds are things are going to continue to stew. And if you look at the stories that we have been talking about, how good we are at creating drama and creating stories, odds are good that left to its own devices, things will just continue to build. And eventually there'll be enough momentum that, you know, pass the salt. F you. You've ruined my life.
I'm going to throw in that the conversation does not have to be with words.
Yeah.
I saw a beautiful, there was a mother who posted about her son and her husband. The son they were on a road trip or something like that. And the son was absolutely furious. And the father stopped the car. Now, this is a teenager, didn't look like a very small teenager. And the father took his son on his lap and just held him. Not held him down, but held him. And just was there. And you could see it was just this beautiful thing. The mother was taking some pictures. And the transformation in this young boy, there were no words. It was just them being in the state that they were in together. And the son just melted after a while into the father, just like babies mold into their parents. And it was beautiful to see. So sometimes it's not about words. It's about actually being with the other person, being present. And if we're going to talk about creating the space, the openness to be with whatever is there and allowing it and respecting it. and allowing it to flow. So I just wanted to throw that in there.
Yeah,
I also
beautiful.
just wanted to mention, beg pardon?
Beautiful.
Thank you. I also wanted to mention from how I look at the comment, can you speak about how avoiding conflict can actually create conflict? What are you actually avoiding? Because to me, you're not avoiding conflict. You're avoiding something. You're avoiding feeling fear. You're avoiding something. So to start with, getting present enough and real enough to acknowledge what you're actually avoiding. And then, who's creating conflict, right? If I'm feeling that there is a conflict, I'm creating that in myself. The other person is creating whatever he or she is creating in him or her or themselves. So I cannot create. Somebody's playing with the pictures here, or it's happening all on its own because I'm not touching anything. And I'm the tech person, so I don't know what's going on. But somebody's creating conflict. No, I'm kidding. There is the matter of whatever each person brings, whatever each person is creating. So I cannot create conflict in you.
Agreed.
So it's getting, again, very clear. I always want to say honest, but real, whatever, very clear about what is actually going on. What is being created, what is being potentially avoided. And then from that place, at least in my experience, I always know where to go from there. Because the minute I can see what's really there, the answer lies in that. And it's kind of like the exercise that you, Fred, and Bobby did, where Bobby is being with his experience. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, you know what? I know what this is about, right? It's just getting present and real and really clear about what is actually going on. So I wouldn't word it like, I understand why it's worded like that, or at least I think I do, but I would word it differently and get more clear and concise about what is actually being created. I hope that was helpful.
It was for me.
Thank you. So we are at the last few minutes of our roundtable talk for this week. And I would like to know, I know, Fred, you got something cooking. Does anybody else want to have a closing comment or let people know of an offer or something you're going to be running? What would you like in the last few minutes?
Well, with that wonderful lead in, Marion, thank you very much. I'll jump in. So I've mentioned this, I think, a few times, and then Bobby was kind enough to set up an interview with me, or whatever we call what we did last Wednesday, where I got to share a little bit more about this group that I'm creating. The intention of the group is to be low cost, high value, 20 or 25 bucks a month, where we're going to come together and we're going to dive deep into some of these principles of presence, principles of creation, and to do it in what I believe is a very powerful format, which is a larger and larger group format, where the energy of the group is what fuels our creations, and there'll be meditations and processes designed to harness that energy. So I really fully expect that people will create miracles out of participation with this in their lives, in their business, whatever they're looking to do. So that's still in process. Like, I don't have an absolute launch date, but I mean, I think just tag me, like you tag me in the Presence Posse group, and I'll get that message if you're interested. And I'll be delighted to talk to you more.
Yay. Thank you. Anybody else?
Yeah, I have a book that I'm creating, and I am looking for feedback on what I'm creating. It's a multimedia book. There's audios that are built into the book that are meditations for you to listen to. And then there's some deconstructing of those meditations. And what I am attempting to do is take a process that I do one-on-one with people and teach myself how to teach this one to many. And I need a lot of feedback from people to be able to do that. It's the only way I can figure out, I don't have the ability to calibrate as much with a group, particularly in a book format where there's no calibration at all. So I'm releasing these audios in my Facebook group, which is called Our Mindful Life. You can just put that into the search box in Facebook. And I'm dropping one audio today, one tomorrow, and I think 2 more by the end of the week, although that still is a work in progress. So we'll see how that goes. And it will be a book that I will sell at some point, but this is an opportunity if you're willing to give the feedback. Whether you actually end up giving feedback or not is irrelevant. If you just go into the group and go along with the audios, you can, I hope you will give me feedback, but I think you'll have a really wonderful, deep meditative experience. And the goal of this is to really experientially bring the power of presence into our life. So it's something that we know in our heart rather than something that we just understand in our mind. So if you want to come along for the ride, Our Mindful Life on Facebook, we'll get you there. Thanks for tuning in.
Perfect. Danielle, is there anything going on with you?
Nothing really new. I have individual one-on-one available, and you can certainly do a call with me to see if we're a good fit.
Use your horse's foot.
I used to do horse feet for a living, but now I have created a 6-week course that I offer ongoing, and another 10-week course that's a little more intensive that I probably will launch in March. But same thing. It's kind of ongoing. It's kind of in the creation process. So I'm really excited about what we do have going on in here and looking forward to participating in some of that, and loved your post that you are open for business too. So tell us what you got going on, Miriam.
Thank you. I am actually testing a new format. So I'm running a 12-week one-on-one program, or 1-to-1. It depends. Some people say one-on-one, some people say 1-to-1, for 5 people. And because I'm testing this out, I'm only taking 5, and you will have a reduced rate for this program. And you will be working with me intensively on we're going to go really deep into your core issues. We're going to clear out some stuff. All those times where you're wondering, like, I don't know why I'm doing this. I don't know why this is happening. I don't know what to do next. We're going to look at that, because yes, you do. There's a piece of the puzzle maybe missing you're not seeing, but you do know. Who else could possibly know other than you? So you have the opportunity to work 1-to-1 with me for 12 weeks intensively at a very reduced rate, because I'm testing out a new model. If you would like to do that, please let me know. You can either contact me in the Presence Posse group or at the address email below, and let me know that you're interested. And I'm calling it the Power Model. So you can let me know you would like to try the Power Model, and we can have a conversation to see if you're a fit for the model. And I look forward to having that chat with you. Yeah. So that's where I'm at. And that concludes our talk for today. I thank everyone who has participated, your comments, your questions, and just for being here and watching. And for those of you who are watching the replay, thank you for that. And you are, of course, still welcome to make comments and ask questions, and we will follow up. And of course, I thank my fellow posse possums. Just creating. Bobby Todd, Danielle McMahon, Dr. Fred Blum, and me, Miriam Siegel. We will see you again next Monday, same time, with a new topic about all things presence. Take care, everyone, and thank you very much for joining.